Brad Chandler, welcome back to the show, my man. It's been about 4 years since we last did one of these.
Oh my gosh. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. It's an honor. So if people haven't listened to your first episode, we'll have people go back and check that out. You were one of the first interviews on the show back a long time ago, man. So a lot has changed since then. So we will get right into that. So before we get into what we're going to talk about today, give everyone a little bit about who you are, where you're based out of, and what your real estate business looks like. And then we'll cover the important stuff after.
Yeah. So I read a book on how to buy real estate with no money down. I was in ninth grade and figured I wanted to do real estate investing since then. My neighbor, an investor bought my neighbor's house in late 2002 in Vienna, Virginia. I went and talked to him. He's like, hey, I buy houses at 30% below market, fix them up and resell them. So I spent I was like, all right, I'm going to do that. And I just had a new child. So my son was born. So I would come home from my job and put him to, I'd spend like 6 to 8 with him, get him to bed. And then I'd start working from 8 to 11, and 8 months went by of nothing. And I'm like, I can do this. If they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
And in July, I bought my first house. In August of 2003, I bought 6 houses. And then in October, I came home and told my wife at the time that I just quit and I was forming Express Homebuyers. And she's like, oh my God, we've got 3 kids, a newborn. And then she had 2 kids. She's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, it'll be fine. And then 4,000 houses later, 19 years later, it's been fine, right? So my team is, I got about 15 full-time people, and I've got about another 12 or 13 full-time virtual assistants in the Philippines. We're based out of Springfield, Virginia. We're going to do 300 deals this year, primarily in DC, Maryland, Virginia, but we did just open Los Angeles. We had an employee move out there, a top employee, a really good employee. And so we started spending some marketing, and we've done a couple of really nice deals out there. I've got the company running to a point where I only spend about 2 or 3 hours a week now.
That is amazing, dude. Wow. So let me just unpack some of that. So you started buying houses, many, many years ago. 4,000 houses later, you've seen up markets, down markets. You've been through all the craziness in 2007, 2008. And now, obviously, you got the business at a point where it's systematized, where it's basically, running itself for the most part. So the 2 to 3 hours a week that you're spending on your business, because a lot of people want to get to that level, but they have a difficult time doing it. When you're actually working on or in the business at this point, what activities are you doing, if anything, or is it mostly just strategy and reviewing the numbers at this point? Because you got everyone doing the stuff.
It's the latter mostly. I show up on Wednesdays. We have a managers meeting. We call it a scrum at 9:30 that lasts for about an hour and a half, where we go over all the numbers from the different departments. And then I have a one-to-one with an operations manager, probably not even every week, maybe once every 2 weeks. And then I meet with our CFO probably once a week or once every 2 weeks. And that's it.
Just to review the numbers.
Yep.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Now, since we last spoke, you still have a very similar, infrastructure with your team. Now, did you guys when COVID came to town, at least, like this was a couple of years ago, did you guys stop going on in-person appointments and start doing everything over the phone? Or are you guys still kind of doing a hybrid of that?
We were doing a hybrid, and we're back to doing all. If we can get in a house, we want to get in a house.
Yeah. I've found that to be more effective, but at least with the way our business is, we're just doing it over the phone. We'll go on appointments if needed. If it's like a local appointment and the seller's wants to see us. But a lot of people shifted their businesses when COVID happened, and they never went back. So, a couple more things, and then I want to get into really what you've been working on over the last 2 years. What have you been doing in this market shift? The last 6 months. I remember I had a flip on the market in San Diego in May, and it was right when the interest rates started going up. And the realtor that listed it for me, I was like kind of getting nervous. He's like, I think it's too early right now. We ended up selling it, no problem. Like a month after that, whole San Diego market just took a nosedive. And I was like, oh my God, I got so lucky on this. So what have you guys been doing to, shift with the market?
So you mentioned earlier, we have lived through the greatest run-up in real estate history and the greatest downturn in real estate history. So we've already been through that. A lot of people in this business haven't been through that. There's some similarities and some differences. So it's harder to sell houses, right? The buying power of the average consumer, I think, if someone could afford a $400,000 house now, they can afford a $260,000 or $280,000 house. So it's dropped substantially, right? So what are we doing? We're doing a number of things. Number one, we started staging again, which we hadn't done in a long, long time, spending the money on staging, putting furniture into the house. We're doing landscape packages outside. Back in 2008, 2010, my partner used to say, we don't need to sell 1,000 houses. We just need to sell one house in one neighborhood. So let's make it the nicest house. So we were doing, upgrading our renovations. So we're just making sure our renovations look really, really good. And then from an analysis standpoint, we're looking way more at the actives and the solds. And people who've been in the business since 2015, there's no reason to look at actives, right? When the market's going up, why are you going to look at an active? If you don't look at actives now, you're going to be out of business soon, because you could look at a sold that sold 2 months ago, 3 months ago for $300,000 and go, that's my comp. 2 years ago, you'd think if it was 300, maybe it sells for 310. Well, so you find a comp nowadays, it sold for 300,000 60 days ago. You don't look at the actives and you notice that there's an active for 275 that's been on for 59 days. Your place isn't worth 300. It's not worth 275 either if it's been sitting there for 59 days. So what's it worth? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. 240, 250, 260. I don't know. So we were underwriting back in the day. If it was going to sell for 300,000, we would take like 5% off just immediately. Now we're like, okay, it's going to sell for 285. So those are some things that people can do. Start staging, make your places look really nice. You better have curb appeal from the outside. You better not focus on sold comps, because like I said, you'll be out of business. We did broker incentives back in the day. We used to take bus full of brokers to, the Redskins games. We would offer incentives to sell our places. We would offer incentives if they sold them quickly. So we're back to, we haven't gone that far yet, but we'll pull out anything we need to.
Totally, man. Yeah, no, I've seen that too. Like people not looking at sold, especially in like these crazy markets like LA, San Diego, even the New York City suburbs. Like I'm only looking at actives and pendings right now at this point. Like that's all that really matters. If you don't look at that, like you said, you're going to certainly be out of business, because those comps. I have a friend real quick. He flipped a deal in San Diego. He made $500,000 net, which was not normal. And he listed his property. This was a year ago for $99, like $1 million basically. He got an offer, no appraisal, like contingency, for 1.3. Guy closed 21 days later. And
is this our mutual friend?
No, not him.
Okay.
Not him. Another guy. That was another good deal too. I do know that one pretty well as well. It's like 10 minutes from my house. But my buddy Johnny did this one for 1.3. And I remember I was like actually at a baseball game with him, and I'm like, man, that's awesome. I'm so happy for you. You had a great year. But I knew at that point, I knew the neighborhood. I'm like, there's no way this is going to last. Like this is a normal 3-bed, 2-bath house, maybe 1,200 square feet, selling for 1.3, 1,000 a foot. Not going to work in that neighborhood. And I'm certainly right. That thing is probably worth, at this point, if that were to go on the market, probably 875.
Oh my! From 1.3 to 875.
I mean, in this neighborhood now, that's like I had a wholesale deal with our mutual friend. We got together. And we couldn't wholesale a similar property in the same zip code, dude, for in the 7s. We couldn't wholesale it.
Gosh.
And we were like, we had a contingency. We got out of the contract, but it was in the same neighborhood. And I'm like, anyway, it was crazy. But the market has shifted. Definitely focus
sounds
on
like short sounds like short sale is going to be coming back.
Yeah, or sub 2s, taking that thing over sub 2. But anyway, yeah, the takeaway for the listeners is make sure the actives and stay on top of the market and be really conservative with your numbers. But anyway, Brad.
I mean, on that note though, Greg, would you want to take over a property that has a mortgage on it for $1.1 million or $1.2 million that was worth $850?
Probably not.
No, and I've had this discussion with people, and they're like, "Well, who cares as long as it cash flows?" And I'm like, why do you want to control an asset that's 25% less than the value? Like you're overpaying it for 20. Yeah. And then what happens because rental demand has already started to crash, when these people stop paying and you're gonna have 100 sub 2s, how are you going to pay that? Do you have an escrow? Oh, no escrow account. What's that? Everything sounds great when things are going up, but when the shit hits the fan, it doesn't sound so great anymore.
Totally. Especially with a property like that. Well, with a crazy value, like I've not been a big sub 2 guy ever. I mean, that's not my wheelhouse. I mean, I certainly know how to do them, but it still has to fundamentally make sense as a good real estate investment. Like you said, like it's got to have at least break even equity or maybe a little bit of equity. And it has to actually make real cash flow. I've learned the hard way by being a landlord. $500 a month is not really cash flow. It's really like 150 after you account for all the CapEx and management fees and stuff. So yeah, people are drinking the sub 2 Kool-Aid and they just think they're going to go out in there. And by the way, on another note with that, I don't know about you, Brad, you've bought more houses than me. Sub 2 deals are not easy to get from sellers. I mean, you got to get someone who is really in a jam to do a sub 2 deal. Ask me how I know. Like it is a tough sell because you're basically taking their debt over.
Yeah, and then they might sell it to you, and then 6 months later, 2 years later, come back and be like, "You frauded me. I want to buy a house. I can, or I want to buy a car." Like, and then the whole story changes. Yeah,
and then you're on the news.
And then they're suing you, and anyone can sue anyone for anything. Believe me, I know well. So I mean, and then you got to defend yourself, and thousands of dollars and bad reputation.
And you still got to make the mortgage payment because then the credit's gonna get ruined. Yeah,
and then they'll sue you for that too.
Then you really got to get yourself figured out. So, oh man. Anyway, well, listen, Brad, you went through a big transformation over really the last 24 months. You've been on the journey. So just tell everyone, like, how did it happen? And I know there was a story with your son. You were taking him to, I think, a therapist or something like that. I'll have you tell the story. You say it better than I do.
Yeah. So I got on a Zoom call with a lady, a mutual friend. I think you know him too in the business. Had said he called me one day and he's like, "How's life?" I was like, "Life is amazing. I mean, it's so great." But my son has anxiety pretty bad. He's like, "Well, you got to talk to my friends. They're experts in helping people with that." So I got on a Zoom call like this, and within like 5 minutes, she's like, "Do you realize you have a tic?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "You blink profusely when you talk about your childhood. Anytime your childhood comes up, you start blinking." She goes, "You probably have some unresolved childhood trauma. Would you like to come out and work with my ex-Navy SEAL husband and bring your son out for a weekend?" And I'm like, "Of course, I'll do anything to help my son," right? So over the course of a weekend, and really it was just 3 hours that was really the life-changing event. We went through this exercise where we went back to my childhood and looked at the stressful times and the trauma that I had endured. And we figured out the stories that I told myself, which was just my brain doing what it should have been. It came up with coping mechanisms to say, why am I in this situation? When a 6-year-old, something bad happens to a 6-year-old, Greg, what does that 6-year-old say? "I'm bad. This is the only reason it must be happening to me." And that's okay, because that allows you to get through it, right? If you didn't have a reason, you'd be like, "Why is this happening to me?" You're like, your survival brain, you're giving yourself a reason to survive. At 6 years old, when you say it's bad, it's one thing. When you're 47 and your subconscious mind is still telling you that, you do a lot of silly things with your behavior. So what did that cost me? It cost me 2 failed marriages. I have 2 kids with some minor behavioral problems. I smoked weed for a couple of years on a daily basis. I drank, to feel comfortable in social situations. I made 5 business mistakes that cost me $9 million. So anyway, through that weekend, my life so profoundly changed, and I found freedom and happiness through self-love and self-compassion by turning around those childhood untruths. Things changed so dramatically for me that I'm like, this is incredible. Like, this was so easy. Like, there's so much suffering and struggling in the world. Just look at the news. I mean, look at the reality.
Oh, don't even get me started.
Dude,
with that.
I don't watch the news anymore, but the divorce rates, first divorce rates, 50%, the second divorce rate, 60%, the third divorce rate, 72%. You've got obesity, like 60% obesity. You've got medication for anti-anxiety and depression going through the roof, but you've got hospitalizations for those same things going through the roof. Drugs don't work. I could go on and on and on and on and on. Addictions, our prisons are full. 99% of the reason for all of those things, the war going on in Ukraine, everything comes down to an individual's lack of self-love and self-compassion. And why do they lack self-love and self-compassion? Because of the untruths that they told themselves from childhood, because of what their imperfect parents and caregivers did to them. The truth is, there's nothing wrong with you. You are enough. You always were enough, and you will always be enough. And when you can understand that and get in your subconscious mind, so I've become a certified hypnotherapist now. When you can get into your subconscious mind and retrain it to say, hey, this isn't right. I've been living for 47 years, in my case, I've been living a lie. And you can turn that and live in the truth. Your whole world changes. And that's what happened. And so now I'm like, I've got to give this gift to other people. This is why God put me here.
Dude, that is amazing. And I can just tell with like your energy. I haven't seen you in person in a while, but just like you look different, you look like almost younger, you've always looked relatively young, but you look younger, you've got more energy to you. So I'm taking a guess that you quit the booze and you quit the weed.
So I think in 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks from now will be my two year anniversary of alcohol. I have played around, meaning like I can count on one hand the times I've had weed in those 2 years, and every time I've done it, I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? Because something I've recently learned, and I got like I told you earlier, 360,000 views on social media, is that REM sleep and sleep in general is really important to your health. And it's really important to cutting anxiety and to cleaning out toxins in your body and your memory, everything. There's so much importance. Well, I didn't know this. Shame on me. Weed and alcohol don't allow you to get into REM sleep. So I would sleep for like 8 to 10 hours when I was smoking weed at night, saying, oh, I'm smoking weed because it helps me sleep. Oh yeah, it helped me sleep, but I really wasn't sleeping. Now I can sleep like 7 hours and wake up more refreshed than I did when I was sleeping 8 to 10 hours.
Man, that's amazing. It's interesting you say that, because I have some friends who will go unnamed that need to smoke weed a couple nights a week to go to bed. And I've always hated weed. Listen, I've certainly smoked weed before. I mean, most people have, but it's always given me anxiety, and I've always like freaked out when I've done it. So now I'm like, no way. But some people, yeah, they think they need weed to sleep. I'm like, I don't know. I've never really bought that, but yeah, it makes me feel weird, man.
So Greg, here's something that no one really knows, at least I didn't, is that chronic marijuana use is termed 2 times or more a week. When you chronically use marijuana 2 times a week for over 12 months, it does create anxiety. Sometimes it creates anxiety right away. So a lot of people smoke weed, including my son, for a long time, saying, oh, it helps my anxiety, it helps me go to sleep at night. But it might help you go to sleep at night, but it literally creates anxiety. Another thing I learned from this, you've probably heard of Andrew Huberman, the guy from Stanford. Dude,
Yes,
I mean, that dude is effing amazing, right? I was listening to a podcast on the way home from my mom's from Christmas. You have a 25% more likelihood of having psychosis and schizophrenia if you are a regular marijuana user from the age of 18 to 24. How many people know that? How many people would be singing the praises? And you can get marijuana everywhere now. And because it's legal, people think it's like, it's safe. Well, alcohol is legal and it's not safe. But can you imagine how many 18 to 20 years are smoking? Do they realize that they have a 25% increased risk of having schizophrenia later in their life? Like, dude, that's crazy.
That is crazy, man. And I mean, now that you said that stat, I mean, I have some stories, man, where I'll give you a quick example. This is the real estate podcast, but we're gonna talk about smoking weed here. I remember one time, this is crazy. I smoked weed. I'll never forget this, dude. I was a major scary event. I was in Pennsylvania camping with my idiot friends, and we smoked weed. I got so blazed, dude. I'm not kidding. I got so high. It was like a panic attack. I had like a panic attack. I'm in a tent in the middle of the woods. This is before iPhones. This is a long time ago. And I was freaking out. I was like, I was like hyperventilating, and they started screwing with me because they're like, oh, this guy's really high. Let's just mess with him. And I literally thought, Brad, I thought I was going to die. I'm like, I think this might be the end of my life. This is terrible. I mean, I don't know what's going on. I was afraid to walk out of the tent because a bear was going to eat me. And I woke up the next morning and I was luckily fine. And I was just thinking, I'm like, that was the most miserable experience ever from weed. I'm like, how can people do this every day? I don't know. Maybe it was just me, but it's always given me anxiety, dude.
Dude, 3 days before 9/11, which was a long time ago, I decided to try hash brownies in Jamaica, and I had a similar experience. Thank God my buddy told me not to have a second one because it takes a long time to kick in. I was like this close away from calling 911. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible.
Yeah, man, it's terrible. So when you quit the alcohol and the weed, because a lot of people listening might have issues with this. I mean, this is a common thing in America. Did you go cold turkey, or did you kind of wean yourself off of it?
No, so the story behind the not drinking is I was on my boat in the Keys. Well, it would have been two years ago this coming January, and I'd been drinking for 3 days. We'd start drinking at noon, just drinking beers throughout the day. Never got like drunk. I wasn't hardly ever get drunk in my adult age unless I was like playing in a golf tournament because I was super nervous. That was my old thing. I would get super drunk at these tournaments because I'd become so nervous because I was worried about what other people thought of me. Now I can go play in tournaments. I don't need anything, and I play great. So I got off. It was a Sunday morning. I woke up. I had the worst effing heartburn, and I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I got to take a break from drinking. So I stopped drinking, and I was like, I'm going to take a little bit of a break. And then I went to brain camp, which is another thing, which I don't want to get into the logistics, but it's basically like without good gut health, without the good gut bacteria, your brain doesn't operate. It's called your second brain. Not many people know this. And alcohol is one of the things that kills it. So I went and I spent a fortune, brought my son there too. And they're like, well, if you start drinking again, you're going to kill your good gut bacteria and your neural health isn't going to be good. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to wait a little while. And then I started to do all the things that I did without alcohol. I was the guy who started drinking at 10 years old. I was a guy who would look at the person not drinking at a sporting event or a golf or a boating and be like, what's wrong with them? They have no idea how much fun they're missing. And I started doing all these events with my new self. My new self is that I don't care what people think, because now I love myself and I understand if someone judges me, it's them, it's not me. So now I can be a fool. I can sing, I can dance. And I started to go all these events and I'm like, wait, that was another lie I've told myself, that everything's better with drinking and drugs. It's not. I took my daughter to a Ziggy Marley concert 3 months ago. It was the first reggae concert I've ever been where I wasn't super high, or high, period. And I'm like, dude, I danced the whole time. I was 3 rows from the front. I remember everything. I didn't have to Uber home. I was like, weed and alcohol numb your experiences, and they mess up the connection with other people. You can't really have a deeply connected. So anyway, I stopped cold turkey. And it's been the two best years of my life, not just because I quit weed and alcohol, but I made that switch to, I love myself because there's nothing wrong with me. It was my parents, and it was their parents and their parents and their parents. So I'm good.
Man, that's so good, because so many people, man, sometimes I have conversations with people, and, maybe it's a real estate let's just use a real estate example and we'll tie it back to the main point you're making here. They're telling me some sort of limiting belief, like, oh, I don't have time to call, or whatever it is, insert the blank objection. And, it's not that they don't have the time. It's just that they don't believe that they're good enough to probably do the work that they would need to do in order to have the success. And now, as I'm thinking about this, like, it all really ties back to maybe when they were younger, or definitely when they were younger, they had some sort of standard they might have been held to that was a false standard from their parents, who maybe had it from their parents. And that one belief, Brad, has ripple affected and compounded in their life to where now they're trying to make a career out of real estate investing. And that one stupid belief of you're not good enough, or this doesn't work, or whatever the hell they were told, is literally costing them potentially millions of dollars a year in net income, right? Just from one bad belief, dude. Think about it.
Greg, literally everything, maybe 99.8% can be traced back to childhood programming. Why do people procrastinate? Fear of failure. If they do something and they fail, then, oh, see, they're right. My subconscious was right. You are not good enough. Why are people perfectionists? There's only one reason people are perfectionists. They're trying to prove something. They've got to be perfect because their subconscious mind is telling them you're not good enough, because whatever your parents or caregivers told you, you believe you're not good enough. So I've got to be a perfectionist. It's what drove me to make millions of dollars, but it also cost me millions of dollars in mistakes trying to chase my worth. So now I've switched from trying to make a bunch of money to prove my worth to now I'm making an impact. And we're going to have the best year ever at Express Homebuyers. Brad Chandler Coaching is the first company I've ever started. And I started selling blow pops when I was in 7th grade. It's the first company I've ever started where I didn't say how much money I can make. My thinking every single day is, how can I make a bigger impact? How can I make my clients more successful? How can I make sure that my clients are successful, happy, and free the rest of their life? And when we talk again on this podcast, hopefully it won't be another 4 years, but let's just say it's 4 years. I bet you're going to ask me the question, how have you done financially? And I might tell you that I've done way better financially in this coaching business than I ever did in real estate. And I've made millions in real estate. Why? Because I'm doing it to make an impact in helping people. I'm not doing it to prove my worth to make a bunch of money.
Dude, that is so good. And it's so great that you're saying that, especially in the business that you and I are in, and the friends that we have and the circles that we run around in. Like, everyone is just constantly pounding their chest. Everyone's like, oh, I got to do more deals. I got to do more deals, because of that belief. It's a lie.
Yes, it's a lie.
Yeah,
it's a lie. And it's what cost them their marriages, because they're working constantly to try to prove themselves. And they're saying, you know what, if I go home, I'm not going to make any money. I'm already married. So if I can just make another $1 million here, who cares? I'll be worthy. Yeah. It's all unconscious. That's the thing. You don't know you're doing it. I didn't wake up every day. I bought a 42-foot boat. Didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, I'm going to take it to the Bahamas. 60 days after buying a boat, never owned a boat in my life. I'm taking it to the Bahamas. I didn't know why I was doing it. Now I look back and it was like, well, I'm going to be able to put all these videos on social media. I'm going to be able to show the world. It was an unconscious thing. So if you're sitting here saying, well, I'm like 2 years ago, if you'd asked me, did I have self-love? Yeah, I have self-love. You'd ask me, did I care about what people thought? I'd be, no, I don't care. But that was a lie. So what you do is you ask the results. What's the result of your life? So if you're listening right now and you're like, well, I have self-love and I don't have those beliefs. Okay, let me ask you some questions. What do your relationships look like? Are you in a deeply connected relationship? And if you say to yourself right now, yes, go home tonight and ask your partner the same exact question and see if you get the same answer. Or have you been from one bad relationship to the next? That's a huge marker. 2, do you have self-destructive behaviors? Do you smoke pot all the time? Do you come home and drink 2 glasses of wine? Do you eat to the point that you're overweight? Do you gamble? Do you look at porn all the time? Do you shop all the time? Self-destructive behaviors is another sign of lacking self-love. Do you judge people all the time? Do you judge yourself? Are you stressed a lot? Those are just some of the markers that I could go on and on and on and on and on that show you that you may think you love yourself, but you don't. And if you can answer those questions in an affirmative way that you don't have self-love, let me tell you, it's not just affecting one area of your life. It's affecting your health. It's affecting your relationships. It's affecting your business. And most importantly, if you have kids, it's 100% affecting your kids, no matter how great of a parent you think you are, and you show up to every sporting game and you give them hugs and kisses. If you feel unworthy about yourself, you are definitely pushing shit down to your child.
And then that's just going to ripple off onto them and become a belief they have that they're going to have to solve in later years.
What do? We're an unwhole person. We're born whole. We become unwhole through our parents and caregivers. We then go marry another unwhole person. We have unwhole offspring, and it goes over and over and over again. So the greatest gift you can ever give your child, because they didn't ask to be brought into this world. You brought them into this world, right? The greatest gift you can give your child is to break the multi-generational curse that you're involved in and that I was involved in. So that's what I'm doing with my kids right now. I am trying to undo the damage that I did to them and that their mother did to them over the years. Fortunately, they're 15 and 20, and they're going to be great. Like, they have all the tools, and now they just have to use their tools, right? But had I not gone through this transformation, had my son not had anxiety, it's just weird how things work. So I created, and his mother created the anxiety in him. So he came, I tried to get him help, and in getting him help, I got help for myself. And now, because of my son, I'm able to hopefully help thousands or millions of people.
Dude, it's just amazing.
The universe and God doing its thing.
Right? What do they say? Tony Robbins says his life happens for you, not to you. Right there. And ironically, you got the water in your hand right now, just staying hydrated and not having to have a beer on the podcast. You're supplementing that with water. Man, this stuff is so powerful, and there's just so much junk in people's heads. And people a lot of the times, and I fall guilty of this a little bit, but I try to always catch myself. People, when they have like a bad thought, like they feel like there's nothing they can do to solve it. Like, oh, this is just who I am. Or like they tell themselves stupid shit, and they like put themselves in this mental prison. And I've always just tried my best. No one's perfect here, but like to say, like, why am I thinking this thought? What's making me think this way? And then another thing, Brad, I've found, I'm sure you could agree with this, and you probably do this, is I always try to just reflect and divert back to gratitude. Like, I heard a quote one time. It's like, you can't be like fearful and grateful at the same time. And if you just lead with gratitude, everything else will take care of itself. So how do you incorporate like gratitude into your life now? Because obviously you've made some substantial change, bro.
Well, let me hit on something else that you said, the identifying the thoughts and how people are saying they're stuck. So I developed this thing. If you go to bradchandler.com/tracker, you can download it. And at the top of it has specific instructions. And it's basically like, anytime that you feel upset inside your body, that's your mind's internal alarm system. It's an opportunity for you to recognize, hey, something isn't right. If you walk into a crowded bar, you walk in somewhere and you feel something bad, then there's something wrong internally that you need to do. So if it's walking to a bar, or your spouse says something, your partner says something, this says it right at the top of the tracker. You can go, like I said, go to bradchandler.com/tracker. Pause. So you don't fire back. You pause for a second. You identify the emotion by saying, I am feeling. Because if you say, I am mad, that's an identification, and those last forever, pretty much. A feeling comes and goes. So you start by saying, I am feeling sad. I'm feeling mad. Then You give yourself compassion for feeling that, because as a child, most of us didn't have compassion for our feelings. So you say, okay, Brad, it's all right that you feel sad, because really it's a 6-year-old Brad inside that feels sad. It's not the 49-year-old. So you give yourself compassion. And then what you said, you try to figure out where it came from. And then if you have a really good relationship where you're growing, you say to your spouse or partner, hey, this action in you, it's not your fault, just caused me to feel this way. Would you help me explore it? And then when you're done with that, because this is how my new relationships work, and the new Brad, my new intimate relationships, is you come away with a better understanding of yourself, more connected to yourself, but more connected to the person who created it, because you've now talked through it. So there's literally science around this, that when you get into, most people spend 75% of their time in a fight or flight mode. As a business owner, if you're being chased by a tiger, how strategically do you think you can think? How can you write copy for that postcard? How can you review whatever it is? You can't. So by identifying the emotion, they did the study at UCLA where they got the participants and they showed people with the different emotions, and they said, oh, they feel angry. As soon as they said the anger part, or excuse me, as soon as they saw the picture, it triggered their monkey brain, their fight or flight. They then a second later asked them, what is it that you see? And when they said, I see them being mad, it flipped from their fight or flight brain to their thinking brain, and it got them out of the fight or flight. So the hack that I just gave you works really, really well on so many levels.
Dude,
so
that's golden, bro. You are loaded with knowledge, bro.
Dude, I mean, that's all I do. Like, I stopped watching sports in the, like this. I've got a stack of books this high. You can't see them next to me, like a foot high. It's all I do. I've studied under some of the world's best. But getting back to the gratitude thing, dude, I'm constantly, like, I go to bed at night. I write 5 things that I was grateful for, and then 3 good things that happened to me. I write those in the morning, and if I skip in writing, I'm talking about them. I am constantly grateful. And the thing that you said earlier about life happening for you and not to you, nothing bad happens to me in my life anymore, because how do I know if it's bad? My second wife walked out on me 30 days into COVID. She's like, I'm done. Packed up the house, literally put up a moving truck. I was on vacation 7 days later, gone, right? And I'm like, that is terrible. Well, now looking back years later, I'm like, that was one of the most pivotal things that happened to me in my life. So I get in a car accident. I haven't been in a car accident, but let's say I get in a car accident, going to the gym tonight. Do you think I'm going to be like, this is terrible? No, I'm going to be like, all right, this happened for a reason. Maybe I'm going to meet someone at the car repair place that I'm going to save them from committing suicide. Or maybe the car accident saved me from getting run over by a tractor trailer 10 minutes later. You never know. So life is going to happen to you, whether or not you're pissed off or happy. So why don't you just let the universe do its thing and just be happy?
Dude. It's so true, man. What you're doing now is something that I tell people a lot. It's reframing your scenario. It's being able to reframe something. I actually learned this ironically from John Martinez in a sales scenario, but obviously I do it in other things. Like you said, like, maybe you got a fender bender or whatever, and it's like that fender bender caused you to meet someone at the repair shop and you changed their life. It's like anything, like things like that. Like you can reframe stuff. Like this happens a lot. If some nut job, I'm in New York right now, there's a bunch of crazy people on the road. If someone cuts me off, instead of me being like, oh, what a jerk, they cut me off, everyone here is an idiot. It's like, what if that guy's going to watch the birth of his son and he happened to be in a rush? It's like, that'll change your entire freaking perception on it. So you're not like, oh, everyone here is an asshole. And then that belief becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And then, like you said, you trap yourself in a prison and you're screwed.
So someone cuts off the average person.
Yeah.
That person gets so angry because they start yelling and honking, and there's road rage. Who is the driver of the car that got cut off really angry at? It's projection. They're angry with themselves, because if you've got inner peace and inner love like I do, someone can yell at me, they can flip me off because it's happened, and I kind of chuckle, and then I go into this mode of compassion. I'm like, God, they must be really hurting. And let me tell you, it's such a better way to live life than going around like pissed off, looking for everything that is wrong and could piss you off.
I agree. You're going to like this story because it's a real estate one, but the new Greg, will call it, handled it like a champ. So this was actually recent. The deal actually just closed the other day. So my acquisitions guy locks up this monster in Delaware, Newark, Delaware, on East Claremont Drive. We lock the house up. He goes to the house. He doesn't get the contract. He calls me. I told him exactly what to do. I'm like, listen, Go back to the property. Pretend like you forgot to see the attic. Just make up an excuse to get, it was right down the house from where he lives. Go back in there on your way out the door. Say, hey, I know we were supposed to talk Thursday, but hey, I'm already here. Let's try to see if we can make a deal. He sits down, does exactly what I say. He gets the contract signed at a smoking price. I send it out to the list because I still do that in the business. We sell the property for 10 grand more than what we were wanting to get. So great deal, good assignment fee. And I'm on a Zoom call like this. This is the next day, I think. He's calling me and I told him, like, I can't take this call right now, bro. I'm on a call. There's a bunch of people on here. I cannot take. He's like, dude, you got to call me. We're in a serious problem. He's freaking out. And I ended my Zoom call at like an hour later. Hey, what's going on, Brad? How you doing, buddy? He's like, dude, someone on your email list, they took an email and they sent it to the seller and the seller's freaking out and I don't know what to do. And he's like running around with his hair on fire. And I'm like, listen, man, that sucks. But we're going to solve this problem with gratitude. We're going to be able to come up with a solution. Don't worry about it, bro. It's all good. So that was step number one. Long story short, I end up personally calling the seller, who I do not know from Adam, talked them off the ledge, talked to this other investor who tried to snake us because he took the email and sent it to the seller, and the seller got pissed because we're making money on it. The whole thing solved itself with gratitude, compassion, empathy. We got the deal to close. And I'll tell you what, so that it ended up working out because I was calm and grateful and tried to reframe the whole conversation. This is happening for us, Brett, not to us. This is going to be a good lesson to learn. The old Greg, Brad, this was 2 years ago, the New Yorker out of me would have called the investor screaming like an absolute lunatic. I would have threatened a lawsuit. I would have sent a list pendants to the county recorder. I would have tried to file a memorandum of whatever the hell you call it. And I would have just, the seller, you're not getting into this contract. And the whole deal would have died, would have been in a lawsuit. But because I was able to reframe that relatively stressful scenario, I mean, to me, I didn't really care, but it is what it is. I taught him the lesson and we were able to solve the problem and end on a good note, right? But it's all about how you perceive things and how you go about it in a nice, reasonable way and still get what you want. And in this case, we're still buying the house, but it's just, taking this stuff and putting it into action. It's good to do. And it just makes the process go by easier,
It's really just, that's a great example. It's really just living in the truth, right? Mm-hmm. Because we all suffer. It's all self-inflicted and we suffer because we don't live in the truth. And what does that mean? It means that if you believe you're not enough and you're not lovable and you're not this and you're not that, it's all just a lie. So anytime you're struggling, just ask yourself, is this the truth? And the truth is you are enough and you always will be enough. So that's it. Like, just very simple. Happiness is being present and just living in the truth.
Oh man, it's so true, man. Have you ever heard of the book called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It?
I have not.
It's a good book. I think this guy, something Ravikant, wrote it. I read it a couple years ago. It was good. You'd like the book. It's called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. It's a short book. It's easy to read. But you got to be grateful. You got to be able to reframe stuff. And Brad, man, I just got to say, as we start to wind the show up here, man, the transformation you've made is unbelievable. And I'm so excited to see what you're going to do with your coaching business and, the amount of impact you're going to make. And it's just going to be amazing, man. Because I've seen what you've done with Express. You've been a legend in our business forever, man. Like Brad, you hear the word Brad Chandler, like, oh man, Brad Chandler with the big business. But now you still got the big business, but you got the meaningful, impactful coaching business. And I'm so excited to see how many people you're going to help. And I'm excited for you to write your own book eventually, because I'm sure you'll probably do that.
I do. I have plans to write a book for sure.
That's amazing, man. Well, I'm really excited to see what you got going. I'm so happy we got to get you on the show here. So if people are listening to this and they want to get in touch with you, maybe they want to work with you on a coaching basis, or they want to check your site out, like, how can people get connected to you? And let's give them some websites to go to.
Yeah, so bradchandler.com is my site, and you can go there and book a call. I'll do a free 30-minute call with you. I do social media posts every single day.
I see them, bro.
Videos on happiness and freedom and how to live your best life. Really getting some traction there. So please go follow me on social media. I'm on literally every single platform under the sun. And if you go to bradchandler.com/contact, that's a link tree with all of my links. That you can book a call there. You can watch my 4-minute story video. You can, subscribe to all my channels. And yeah, I mean, you just have to know the truth. Remember, we focus on the truth. I'm a truth seeker and a truth teller. And it's not always easy, but the truth is what you got to move through the pain of the truth to get to freedom. You don't have to suffer. If you're suffering in any way, shape, or form, you don't have to suffer. There is a better way. I've created this proven mechanism proven process over the last 2 years that works really well. If number one, you really want to change, and two, you have a willingness to look at things from a different perspective, your life can radically change in a matter of hours, not years or months like traditional therapy. Because again, we go into the subconscious mind and figure out what is really driving all of this behavior that's not serving you.
Man, that's so well said. Quick question on the therapy thing, because I've heard this before. Because is therapy more geared towards the past and like coaching slash instruction more geared toward the future, or is that not accurate?
So I think most therapy, first of all, most therapy is done on a conscious level, and your conscious mind is not driving your behavior. It's all done from your unconscious. So there's strike one. A lot of therapy focuses on the symptoms, like what's going on. You're drinking too much. Let's come up with ways to have you stop drinking. Let's not go by the liquor store. Let's whatever lock the liquor cabinet, whatever it is. But you've got to go to, whether you have a neck pain or you have mental pain, you've got to go to the source of the pain. So what we do is we go right to the place that has created that pain for you as a child, most likely, and then we turn that around.
You got to go to the root to get the fruit, as they say.
Yes, sir.
Awesome, Brad. Well, listen, man, we'll have people reach out to you, bradchandler.com. They can book a call with you. And I appreciate you being a guest. Brad Chandler 2.0 officially has been on the podcast.
Yes.
So we'll talk to you soon, Brad. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, man.